Thank you for clicking in to explore the far-reaching impacts of the choices we make, one conversation at a time. This is the Ripple Effect. TRE likes to present everything in a non-biased way. And a part of that is we want to go ahead and have both sides of the mayoral candidate race covered. We've already covered one. Now we want to cover the other. Today with us, we have Cornelia Downing Manfrey. Miss Manfrey is going to go ahead and tell us a little bit about herself, why she's a better candidate or the best candidate for the job, and how she's going to go ahead and help the citizens of Palm Coast reach the goals that they want to accomplish as well. Today we're going to go ahead and talk to her, get her agenda for the mayoral candidate process, what she can do for the city, and what she can bring to the table that maybe the other candidate cannot. So with that, I want to go ahead and ask Ms. Manfrey if she can tell us a little bit about herself, her background, and why she's a better candidate for the mayor position. Sorry.
Well, thank you. Thank you for inviting me. I'm very excited being on another podcast. I'm Cornelia Downing Manfrey. I grew up in Washington, D.C., and then went on to Fordham University and attended Fordham, majoring in urban studies and French. I then transitioned into corporate real estate in New York. My first job was New York Life Insurance, where I was exposed to multi-million-dollar types of mortgages that were given for large developments throughout the country. Then went to American Express. I was in their corporate real estate department, handled both national and international leasing for them. Then went on to Citibank, United Artists Theaters, and Dunkin' Donuts Baskin-Robbins. And in 1999, we had an opportunity to do some work down here in Florida, and we were introduced to Palm Coast. Came down July 4th, 1999, and fell in love. So we sold our home on Long Island and moved down and established in Palm Coast in August of 99.
Love at first sight, huh?
Yeah. I love being close to the ocean. All three of our children, Catherine, Alec, and Barrett, graduated from Black Bear Palm Coast High School and all went on to major universities throughout the country and have done very well. And we are very proud of the education that they got here. My husband, Jim Manfrey, is a former sheriff. He served for 2 terms, a total of 8 years of service. I also come from a military family. Both of my parents were lieutenants in the Navy during World War II. And my son Barrett is now a lieutenant in the Navy in California. So I come from a lot of background, both being from D.C. and New York and the military background. And now in Florida, I've been here for 25 years. My work has primarily been bringing commercial and industrial users to Palm Coast. That means jobs. That means opportunities. And I'm very proud of that work, but we are lacking new development that will bring new jobs. One of the reasons that I decided to run for mayor was the concern that I have over our infrastructure. We have very serious problems with the roads, the swales being maintained, and particularly our treatment plant 1.
Before we get into that, we're going to definitely cover that in here as we go along. But I really want to talk to you about your urban studies. Can you explain to some of the people that might not know what that means?
Urban studies is learning how cities develop through time. So, and then you also look at the social development of a city, the culture of a city. So part of my learning was going back in time to the beginning of villages and how villages grew, then to medieval times, the development of walled cities, to the megalopolis that you see along the eastern seaboard in the United States, how they function, the type of government that's performed, the type of councils that operate cities. You also learn an awful lot about the social aspect of a city. What types of people live there? Where are they coming from? What countries they come from? And it's very in depth. And then there's a lot of economic application to learning about cities. water, sewer, electricity. How is it formed? What things come in? Then you've got arts and culture that are also added into a city development. It's very fascinating.
So how does this help you draw with like working with your industrial component or your commercial businesses, since you understand how the city works and what draws them in? Is this basically how that helps you with being in that business that you're in?
Oh, absolutely. It's very easy to talk about a place when you're passionate about the place, and I'm passionate about Palm Coast. I'm very impressed of how ITT Corp laid out this area and the amount of dredging that was done, the planning that was done, the infrastructure that was put in. But today, we have to step back and sort of look at how our infrastructure is operating that they put in 25, 30 years ago, 50 years ago. And we've got some gaps that have to be addressed immediately.
Right. As time goes on, things change. And we see that they might have had a different plan for things that's probably changed over time, or people have done it maybe not in the way they planned. So we have to look at that again, I would say. So you're saying that you would have to address certain things that are out of whack, such as our infrastructure. A lot of people are talking about that. They're also talking about the drawing more commercial people to the process. So what would be your main priorities as a mayor? What would you focus on the most?
Well, but first we have to find a very experienced, knowledgeable city manager. So the council is sort of your board of directors for the city, and the mayor runs the meetings, gives direction, is sort of the ambassador for the area. Your city manager is your chief operating officer, and that is the person that reviews all of the budgetary lines of all the different departments, does the hiring and firing, human resources, etc. But the city manager is the one who's running the show and reports directly to the city council. Major things like planned unit developments, development of regional impact, those are the things that come before the city council. But that person is absolutely critical. I believe that we have been lacking an effective city manager for, 7 years.
We've gone through several city managers in the last couple of councils. So what would you be looking for in a city manager if you become mayor?
Where or what abilities?
What kind of qualifications, what kind of abilities, what kind of education, or what is your criteria for the proper city mayor? Or, excuse me, city manager.
City manager. The city manager that I would like to bring in would be somebody who's knowledgeable, effective, already having performed in hiring people, knows budget process, understands the numbers, because at the end of the day, it comes down to the numbers. This year, our new budget year is going to be pulling in $420 million. That's up from $354 million of this fiscal year. That's a huge jump. We need somebody that can look at these numbers and be able to apply them to the departments where the need is. Even though we are a bucket-oriented budget, we need to find the monies that will let the city manager direct the updating of infrastructure. I also want somebody that understands personnel performance, because performance is critical, because the people inside the city hall and the people that are servicing for the city are really your customer service people. Every employee in City Hall is not somebody that this is their job. This is the public's job, and they are accountable to the public. And that includes good customer service, knowing how to be able to take a citizen through a permitting process, knowing how to talk to a developer when they're coming in and looking at doing a project. I feel that the city works more in a reactive rather than a proactive approach. That I'd like to see changed. We need a city manager that understands that and can apply that.
Would you rather see a city manager that was hired from within or hired from somewhere across the country?
We've already gone through the within.
Right. That's what I'm asking. Mrs. Biven. So you would rather see SGR send out applications and try to attract a city manager here?
Yes.
Okay.
So you prefer an external hire, and you prefer somebody that would redo the training basically of everybody, so everyone's on a different path or better educated to do their job. Is that what you're saying?
I think we need somebody that has, hopefully is coming from a larger city that's already dealt with big numbers and also understands about performance of the personnel in the city. Also, I believe that we need customer service training. There are certain ways to address a citizen, and be sure your information that you're giving out is correct. That is the city manager working with the department heads to make sure that the personnel are trained, because it really comes down to the time value of money. When you walk in City Hall, you're there for a purpose. And typically, there are fees for every purpose out there. You have to be sure that you understand the fee structure and how to be able to answer a citizen in a professional manner. So the staff needs customer service training and the understanding of the time value of money.
Okay, it's good to know.
Are you worried about the timeline, meaning that SGR is not going to start the process until the new members are seated, which is, I think, November 19th, and that it's usually a 30-day process. It puts you right around the holidays, and most of these candidates are probably not going to respond around the holidays. It takes much more time.
Right.
So do you see this timeline being more of a 3 to 6 month process to get a qualified manager here, or much longer than that?
No, I think 3 or 4 months should be sufficient.
Okay.
Okay. The other thing that I would have the human resources look into is soliciting consultant companies. Consultant companies have employees that come in, they're trained to be problem solvers. That's what we need. We need problem-solving capabilities. The Boston Consulting Group, KPMG, these are companies that also like their employees, after working with different groups, to be able to go work in the group's atmosphere. So I would seriously consider approaching consultant companies as well.
Well, I just wanted to ask one more question on this. Do you think the bar should be raised for this specific city manager, because whoever it may be is going to be facing almost completely green council? 4 of the members will be brand new, and you'll only have one with 2 years worth of experience. Would you consider that a necessity to find somebody extremely experienced just for that reason?
Yes. I do believe that if there is a local candidate, that we seriously look at a local candidate that already knows the people, the companies that are here, the personnel. So there's maybe an opportunity to find somebody locally as well. And
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Finish your sentence. I'm sorry.
It doesn't necessarily have to be somebody who's already been a city manager.
Right. You know, and the reason I'm asking this is because if you're looking to go with somebody externally, we just had Mrs. Biven, I think is pronounced it. Bevan. She was fired for no cause. And if you're going to attract somebody not in the state, and you're asking them to pull up stakes, come down here, and there's a clause that if you're fired for no cause, you get 20 months. I would think that most people will look at that and say that's not such an attractive deal. And that she was making $175,000. Would you consider that a decent wage, or should it be something more?
Okay, a couple of different questions going on there. It's okay. So Denise was a lovely lady, but she didn't want the job. Number one, she was asked 5 times to take the position. When somebody says no once and they say no twice, I think it means no. So I think it was kind of being cajoled into the position. It was greater than her knowledge and her background. And And so it was wrong time, wrong person. I don't think we necessarily have to go out of the state to find somebody. I really would like to find a Floridian, because Florida is quite a unique state with the demographics that we have, at the terrain that we have, working with wetlands. We've got a lot of wetlands, and the alligators and the snakes and all those things that show up at a hurricane. But it really, I would love to find somebody from the state of Florida that already understands the statutes for Florida, the legislation, understands who the governor is, and what goes on from county to county. And what was the last part of the question?
There was an issue. I read that the 175 salary is not going to cut it. That it's probably going to have to be increased. And I was thinking maybe it's a good idea to let that out so people aren't screaming about it 4 months from now, where it was 175, then it's 220. I'm just wondering if you have any opinion on that.
I'm right now researching what other city managers are being paid across the state. Do we have to increase it? Possibly. And it's kind of a balancing act, because the city manager, in my opinion, should be overseeing the departments. We have a lot of different layers in the city administration right now. So I think some of it has to be massaged. We have to get the numbers where they make sense. So that's why I keep talking about performance-based employees. And we will have to be considering some cutbacks on the budget as well, because right now the monies are needed to get in the infrastructure where it needs to be. And I know that comes out of one pot, but everything has to be looked at. So I think we're going to be looking at some trimming.
Okay, to transition a little bit. We were talking before that you've been here for quite a while, and you've kind of seen the growth of Palm Coast. And being somebody that's in commercial, how would you say that has represented commercial compared to residential growth? And what can we possibly do to fix that problem that's kind of developed over time?
Great question. So our taxes, the $421 million, encompasses only 8% of it from commercial. So that's pretty scary, because we should be closer to 30% coming out of commercial. We are limited by the amount of commercial development, because we don't have a lot of designated commercial areas. And a lot of it is getting developed now. The BJ Warehouse, which is going to be annexed into the city. There's another 30 acres right next door that is being planned for a large commercial development that will probably be annexed as well. Palm Coast Parkway is nearly saturated. We only have a couple of lots, land pieces there. So the growth is actually going out towards Route 1. What I would like to address is looking at the possibility of having lands designated to have as an industrial park. I would like to see an industrial park here, similar to what's down in Ormond by the Ormond Airport. Probably about 30, 40 acres worth of industrial development. That will spur bringing jobs in, because we get a lot of people knocking on the door, but we simply do not have facilities for them to come to. I just finished leasing 24 Hargrove, 20,000 square feet, 7 new companies that are in there. And most of them were from out of town. So we're getting a lot of small business people that are looking at Palm Coast, because we are, although our median house number has gone up, we are still pretty affordable. So it's something that I really would like to focus on, an industrial park and other commercial developments, and enticing technology or medical companies to come in and be able to bring it with whatever they're working on, to have an employee count that's attractive, that brings us more commercial tax dollars.
And more workers too, jobs and everything to
Right.
keep people here instead of going outside. I heard some number about there's 25 to 30% or 50% in some cases of people leaving the city to work somewhere else because there's just no jobs. Have you heard anything like that?
Yeah, I have heard that. When you look at the traffic counts, I studied traffic counts. The exiting on it in the morning is Route 100 and Route 95. We have a lot of people getting on 95 to go elsewhere for jobs, and people go as far as to Orlando for commuting, and that's a long way.
So where would you, other than maybe just rezoning land, is there anything else we can do in Palm Coast that draws commercial in?
Just commercial and industrial. We've got we still have a lot of retailers that would like to come here. So there's a 7-acre piece on Palm Coast Parkway. I had sold the old corporate headquarters of ITT Corp to the school board many years ago, about 18 years ago. And the intention was that the school board was going to use it for administrative offices. Well, they changed and started having classes there. And so the city shut them down because the classrooms require ADA hallway width and certain types of bathrooms, and that building simply did not have that. So sadly, they demolished the building. But there is 7 acres that I would like to see taken off of the school board hands and put back onto the commercial tax roll, and that could potentially be another retail development or office development.
You know, with I was just thinking, just to circle back with this new industrial growth, new commercial and residential growth, it circles back to what you started talking about, which is the taxing on the infrastructure that we already have in place. And you were mentioning stormwater. Can you get back on that for just a second with respect to needing increased money put towards that infrastructure?
In terms of being ready for new growth?
Yes.
Okay, so we, the new councilman actually brought something up, a good point today, was rather than talking about what our needs are today, planning for tomorrow, and that our facilities, our infrastructure, we should be thinking out more like 5-10 years and start planning for that capacity today on what we have in terms of infrastructure and start getting it in place. We have to take care of the immediate needs, but start planning and focusing monies for the 5-year and 10-year. I don't need to talk about 2050 right now. I'm talking about right now, out 5 and 10.
Mm. You know, right now, I was thinking about, as I was driving around, I didn't see too many puddles or too much flooding going on. Now, there was maybe about 100 homes that had some cosmetic damage and maybe a handful of homes that actually had severe flooding. And then most of the summer, I had seen the crews going around regrading all the swales. Now they're moving. They've been doing that since May, and I was wondering, could we look at that as if to say that could be possibly the reason why we didn't see much of that flooding? Is that they're actually doing a great job with this stormwater management?
They're picking up on getting some of the infrastructure cleaned out. Mm. It's cleaning out the canals and not so much the swales in front of a house. It's taking the water that lands in front of a house to get it out to the canals and eventually out into the ICW. So there seems to be a little bit more attention to the storm water. It's not quite enough yet. So I agree with you. I traveled around on Thursday, and I was impressed because a lot of this comes from how ITT laid this out. But it's our mantle of responsibility to make sure that the infrastructure is maintained and planned for the future growth that we're talking about. They had intended this area to have about 250,000 people. We're at like 120 now. We have to plan for the future, and we have to plan the infrastructure that can accommodate that number.
I think they're going to make a decision at the end of the year whether this swale maintenance pilot program is going to continue. Would that be something that you would like to see continued?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Is that just because the swell process is cheaper than the alternatives, or do you think this process, this system, is actually valid and good?
Well, there was a discussion about that at City Council today, and it was mentioned, maybe we should be looking at a different system or a different way to make the water get away from a property. That's talking about massive re-engineering of the entire city. I don't think that's in the budget. So whatever we have to work with what we have. We have to maintain. And why they didn't have more people focused on the swale and the canals before, I don't know. But they're working on it now. I was really quite surprised at the amount of equipment that they have purchased to get the job done. So those people have to be there.
Actually, that I don't even think that London Waterway has come online yet. I think it's supposed to be finished at the end of December. So right now, if we had such little flooding, and then that will come online, which is that 16-acre expansion to the system. It seems like we're doing something right with respect to stormwater here in the city.
Yeah, and that's good to see that being developed.
I wouldn't say, I've been here 10 years, I wouldn't say that all places could be represented this way. I would say depending on where you were at in the city, you would see different things. I know I have a couple areas in where I live, a couple canals probably weren't hit as well as they could have been hit, or a couple swells, quite a bit of flooding actually in certain areas. But overall, I think in some ways, through the 10 years I've been here, I've seen worse. Maybe not in some spots, but overall it has improved somewhat. I think there's still room for improvement, though. Right. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
So other than swells and infrastructure, what other infrastructure do you think that we need to focus on before we continue with this growth process? Because I know there's something like 2,000 homes that are not sold, and maybe another 16,000, somebody said, is already pre-approved.
I don't think
carry
it's
us
quite
maybe 4 years.
Yeah, I don't think it's quite 16,000, but so the roads are very important, and the budget is only talking about repaving about 22 miles, and we have something like 650 miles or something crazy that has to be planned for. And then we also have the issue of speeding that goes on some of the roads. So that has to be addressed as well. Doing some speed bumps. We have crossings that are not lit or lighted. So I do a lot of biking. And when I get to certain crossings, like on Colbert Lane, I have to wait to make sure there aren't any cars coming, because they don't stop when they see the white lines, and they're clipping around 45, 50 miles per hour. I want to institute having the flashing lights where a pedestrian or a biker can ask for the light to start flashing to get the cars to stop. So we have a lot of little details to address. And I think that would be something I'd like to see instituted.
Do you agree with the decision for for water and sewer that was made back in March, that it's going to be impact fees rather than increasing the rate that was going to pay for moving forward?
We'll see what happens with the numbers. That's why I keep going back to what are the numbers. And the budget is the budget, and the infrastructure that has to be incorporated may require us to increase some of the utility rates. I don't know. It's in the numbers. But we have not had much of a tax increase. We have a lot more revenue because of the increased number of houses that are online. And we also have a increased revenue because of the increase in the valuation that the property appraiser has applied to all of the property. So if we're getting that much more money, then how are we redistributing that extra money? So there are just a lot of balls in the air right now, and we have to see what comes down to the numbers.
It was interesting. I was listening to actually read Councilwoman Pontieri. The argument was that we have residents like yourself who've been here for 20, 25 years, and most of the extra use of the system over the last couple of years, let's say 10 years, has been the extraordinary growth of Palm Coast, and most people are complaining because we just came off a 20% increase from 2018, and it was proposed last March that we need another 19% increase in rates. People would stand up and say, well, why don't you have that money being paid for by the new people that are moving in? Because they're the ones who need the expansion to the system. They're the ones who are taxing the system more than the current residents. Why isn't it being paid for by the people that are becoming new to Palm Coast? And so I think the decision to fund it through impact fees was the fallback. Moving forward, do you think those people who would make that argument is the correct way to look at it? That it should be the new people moving into the community that should be paying for the expansion of it, and the fee should maybe increase 3 to 5% annually, which you would expect.
Okay, so let me kind of pull this apart a little bit.
Yeah.
So the increase in households are paying for their utilities. The impact fees that a developer pays for the development of infrastructure for a shopping center or for residents, that impact fee goes specifically for the increase of services that are needed for that site being developed. Okay, so the equation is off. The conversation is off, in my opinion. When you have new people moving in, they're going to be paying for their utilities. They're paying an impact fee for their lot to be developed. So it balances out based on the usage. So you have to look at the total usage then to decide if you need a fee increase specifically for utilities. What we don't know is what is going to be the number to update the infrastructure of our treatment plants. And that will probably fall onto utility fees.
And there was that mandate by the state that by 2028...
And look how long they knew this was coming.
And that's $200 million, apparently, by 2028.
Today they said $240 million.
Okay. Now, I think my understanding was that, and maybe I spoke incorrectly, is that the impact fees, if I was buying a home, $3,500 for water and $5,500 for storm, I'm in the ballpark. That's a one-time fee that's paid.
Correct.
And then I pay my utility rates every month as the service goes on. If the people of Palm Coast paid, in 2018, they had a 20% increase over the span, I think it was 4 years. So it went up 20%. And then the projection last March was, well, we're going to raise rates another 18.9% over the next 4 years, which would be essentially almost a 40% increase from 2018. I'm wondering, all that increase is still not enough to update the system and keep expanding it? And the idea was, and they said, okay, no, we won't increase that. We'll pay for it through impact fees. So in my mind, I'm not getting the math on that either. I don't know how that's
I'm
working.
not getting the math either.
Okay. Okay. As long as I'm not the only one confused.
We're talking about at least 7 to 8 years of non-performance, non-thinking, no collection funding, no support of maintaining the infrastructure that is the responsibility of the government, because we own the utility. So to be able to update that system is not just going to be a utility rate hike. We're going to have to look for funding elsewhere and just pray that we can go find that. Otherwise, we may have to deal with bonding, or do we get it out of Washington? These are all the questions that have to be checked off. And hopefully we get a city manager that will be able to get this addressed immediately. Not tomorrow. I'm talking about immediately. This is serious stuff. I've been here 25 years. This was the first time that I was asked by the city to not use my water, to curtail putting the dishwasher on for this period of time during this Cat 1 hurricane. What if it had been stronger? Okay, we are not prepared. And this is a serious, serious default of the government not to have watched this over the last 7 years. That's a long time that this updating of these systems should have started and been funded over time. But now all of a sudden it wasn't done. So now we have this monster default that we've got to deal with. Where are we going to get $240 million?
Well, this is not the only issue we're dealing with. I think we're also dealing with the water plant, the actual capacity of the water plant as well. Mm-hmm. So we're dealing on both ends, the waste and on the actual water to keep up with the growth of everything. And we have to wonder where all these impact fees went. I know I did a Citizens Academy. When I went there, they had extra capacity at the water plant. Now I'm hearing they're at full capacity. How do we get this, how do we get to full capacity when we had all this extra capacity? And now we don't even have any more capacity. And we're looking, like you said, you want to bring in more commercial. How do we bring in commercial if we can't even give them any capacity?
You can't. I've had 3 companies that I worked with diligently for months, and they were ready to come in, and then all of a sudden, sorry, if you build it in 24 months, we won't have capacity. And they left.
So do you think that this is maybe a result of not having an active city manager, a good foundation for the last 3 or 4 that we've lost because they weren't the right person? So that means it's even more important that the next city manager actually can do the job so that we can try to resolve these problems? Do you
Yes.
Do you think that's a major key to it?
Yes.
It also will be the city council as well. Those that you put on that board will also be vital to making sure that these things are taken care of. Don't you agree?
Yes.
Okay. All right. So next thing we want to talk about is something that you were talking about was the YMCA. Why is it important? Why do you think, what do you want to keep it on the process that we need it, and why?
I used the YMCA in New York when my children were young. I thought they did a fabulous job giving them instruction, keeping them, keeping them fit as a fiddle during the summer months. I was always very impressed with the YMCA concept. Several years ago, many years ago, almost 10 years ago, when the YMCA was vacating their space at the hospital, I was engaged to find property for them to build a new YMCA for Palm Coast. Sadly, the way that a YMCA is structured, their business model is to joint venture with the public government. I toured many YMCAs all throughout Northeast Florida. I was very impressed what was done down in Port Orange, the structure that was done up on Fleming Island, beautiful architecture, great programs, senior citizens, young children, pools, and a lot of air-conditioned gym space. Fantastic structures. But a lot of it comes down to what their formula is, and the formula is working with the government to help get funding from the government to get it started, and then they build up their monies through the membership sales. They already have the concept of health and wellness in place. They have for decades, and they've been very successful. We have not, the city council has not, for many, I would say the last 10 years, have not fully supported the idea of working with the YMCA to get one opened here. That is going to be one of my focuses. We do have some additional lands that I've just learned about that the city owns that could possibly be good locations to joint venture with the YMCA and get something established. I said to the YMCA administrators, I think you could use 2 YMCAs in Palm Coast with the amount of growth that we have going on. There has been land that has been designated down in town center that could potentially be a location for the YMCA, but it needs for the city to make some monetary contribution to get the thing kicked off the ground.
Do you think that the current community center has any value to the YMCA, kind of like competition against it? Or do you think the current community center that we do have that offers different things, it doesn't really equate to a YMCA?
It does not equate to a YMCA. Sadly, that land was at one point being considered for the YMCA, but they decided to resurrect the community center. One wing of it is the old wing. I think that the community center is a lovely building, but it was not planned out properly. There's insufficient amount of parking spaces there, and I'm kind of taken aback how we are putting buildings up. We require parking spaces for all the other developers. Why we didn't have a sufficient amount for the community center is beyond me. And I will bring up another one, the rec center, the Southern Rec Center. I went down to a program down there, and there was no parking. I had to park on the grass, go to my event, get back in my car, and what did I discover? But all these little gnats inside my car that came up from the grassy knoll. That is unacceptable. I think it is a huge mistake to allow any kind of government building that does not comply with the parking ratios and requirements that are already set in our code. Those two locations fail with that, and it's really, really shameful. I did stand up and support the Historical Society taking over Firehouse 22 that's going to be vacated because we're building a new one, and there's no reason to tear that down just for a parking lot. They can add parking on the lot that's owned by the city already on the other side of the fire station, and then that parking can contribute to the number for the community center. I understand that we also have agreements with the adjoining property owner of the medical center that after hours parking can be used from their parking lot. So I think we'll be comfortable. They're just mistakes that were made in the beginning with these two developments.
Does it come down to the management of the city as well? They're just not planning properly, I guess.
Yes.
Okay. Now, to continue with this YMCA, I know that there was different plans. One included a pool. One took the pool out for cost reasons. Do you think it's really a value to have a YMCA without the pool, or the pool is pretty vital to build?
The pool is vital.
So this would have to come through state funding, right? Do you not agree it would have to be pretty much a state-funded project?
No, it would be a combination of city government. I don't know that the state has got involved in any of their projects.
I know that they tried to appropriate funds from the state, and it was disapproved. So that's why I was thinking it might have been a state project.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood where you're coming from. Yes, funds were requested from the state that would be contributed to the city, then the city would work with the YMCA.
Yeah, I mean, appropriation. So I should have been more clear in what I asked. I know that our current, representatives that have helped us get the last $105 million for a road instead of other infrastructure that we needed are probably going to be leaving the office soon. And do you think that we're going to be in a situation where we're going to be able to get these appropriations that we need for the future?
That is an unknown, and we won't know until Election Day.
Sounds like fun. All right. So, what are your other concerns with infrastructure that we haven't addressed yet? Are there any?
I think we've addressed most of them. The roads, obviously, are very important. The residential roads, I do see some deterioration occurring. So I think they should take it by neighborhood and start getting things repaved. They're talking about a repaving substance that, rather than taking a road apart, that puts a sealant on the road. That I'd like to see increased, the amount of miles that are getting covered. And if we have to subcontract out so it can get done faster, that's another alternative.
What do you think about traffic flow, especially in the commercial areas? Since they're condensed into so few places, how do you think that in the design of the city going forward, is there any way we can possibly spread that out a little bit more so there's not so many centralized businesses in one place that draw traffic?
Well, we can't decentralize what has
Right,
already been
but going
zoned.
forward.
Okay. A lot of it comes down to the synchronization of the lights, which has not occurred for many, many years. And for instance, Palm Coast Parkway, at this point in time with the volume of traffic, that I think we're at 45,000 cars per day, those lights should be synchronized so that when you're going east-west, you have a clear shot. Then your north-south lights should be synchronized together so that you're not having this backup of cars because you've got a red light down at 95 and Palm Coast Parkway to Old Kings Road, and then 4 lights before that, you're still stuck. And so you've got cars that are bunching up because the lights are not synchronized to let you flow through. And so you're finding backups. On SR 100, a lot of the lights are not synchronized yet. I'm told that it is due because of the opening of the BJs. And there is some final electrical work that is occurring. So one of the comments that I've gotten from people is, look at all this traffic. So I said, wait a minute. Let's think about why there's so much traffic all of a sudden on SR 100. And that all of a sudden is the citizen enthusiasm and excitement of a new business opening. So people were swarming to the new Miller's Ale House. They were swarming to the BJ warehouse. And so it got backed up. So I said, like all things that are new and shiny, let it calm down. The traffic now is just fine. 9:30 a.m. a couple of days ago before the hurricane, I left a meeting at Panera Bread and went over to the BJ warehouse. There were no cars on SR 100. So it's all a matter of the excitement from a new store opening that people congregate. And I've got to get there because they're giving out coupons and donuts or whatever. Then it calms down. And so it's calming down, but we still need the lights to be synchronized. The only other angst that I've got is at SR 195. I'm baffled by how the exit off of 95 going on to 100, either direction, does not have a lead. They did not make a lead-in lane for you to then merge in with the traffic. You have to stop to look over your shoulder to see if you can get in. And I would probably I would be talking to the state about getting that re-engineered. That's my biggest problem in the area is how that was designed.
I would think the accidents are pretty high there. I know my daughter, my personal daughter was in an accident. She got hit by somebody at that point. But I would think that the accidents might be a little bit higher there. So it would give data for that. Right. But anyways, to go back to what you were saying with synchronizing the lights, I would think this would also be something pretty easy since it would be software based, I would think. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. So why does it take so long for that to happen? No idea?
No idea.
Okay.
Very simple answer.
I guess we're all confused on that one. Now, like, a lot of people brought up like budgetary problems. They're saying that maybe the city isn't using the money properly and so forth. They've talked about audits and things. I'm wondering what your opinion is that, and do you think that if you get the right city manager, that's not necessary? They can go ahead and fix that with the internal, or do you think that there might be some need to look at some of how things have been spent in the past?
I think a good good, astute city manager that has financial capabilities should be able to really zero in on the numbers, as I think the council has to as well. This whole conversation about a forensic audit, that means somebody's doing something bad. And I really don't think so. An audit, yes. Yes, we get audited once a year as required by statute. But if you read the verbiage from the CPA that's providing the audit of the budget, they specifically say we do not review, we do not advise, and we do not guide on how the numbers are being spent. We're just making sure that the X's and the O's are adding up properly. So I think it could possibly require us having a consultant to come review our budget, a financial consultant. But I would think that a good, strong city manager should be able to get that done.
Yeah, I think at this point, what is already spent is spent, so you can't really do much about that. But going forward, you need somebody to plan appropriately. You would say that was
absolutely.
And then there's also some people who are talking about different, parks and recreational things that are within our city, things that are actually losing money. And like the golf course, I heard one city council member talk about. Would there be something that you guys might propose to try to get rid of whatever's losing money for the city so that we bring more money in and can use it for some of these things that we need to do? Would that be something you would consider?
Yes, I would consider that, but you have to remember we're all given buckets.
Right.
So we can't flow from one bucket into another bucket. So we have to figure out the buckets. I am very concerned about the golf course losing money. Why are we in the business of running a golf course then if we can't at least break even? We're not even breaking even. So I am going to be looking at that. I will be addressing it because there's a smaller population of people that actually play the golf. I love to play golf. I love the Palm Harbor Golf Course. But to hear the money that it's losing is unacceptable. So do you have to reformat the fee structure? Do you sell the golf course but have a covenant that it remains as accessible for the residents of the county? I don't know. These are the things that we're looking at, and I've been told two different numbers of how much money it's losing, and that's only for a select group of people, and I think it's unfair for the rest of the city taxes to be covering that. So it's something that has to be reviewed.
Okay, good to hear. I think a lot of people are interested in, the city functioning properly and using this money wisely. One other thing is affordable housing. It's a little expensive to have a house here, rent it here, and so forth. I know that we've had a lot of changes to our bill code when they changed the hurricane winds, I think the state did, and also with the money that came down from state for that. Do you think that we have enough affordable housing in Palm Coast?
No.
Okay.
Very simple, no. And our past administrations have fought some affordable housing concepts that were brought in. I find that just appalling. I do believe in finding there are different ways to do affordable housing. I'm not talking about Section 8 housing. I'm talking about housing that could be subsidized or housing that is at a lesser rate. So you have to look at, it all comes down to, again, the numbers. So a developer wants to make a profit. But if you structure a deal where if the land can be purchased at a reduced rate, maybe some of the city lands could be sold at a reduced rate with a covenant that it remains only for affordable housing. And then the housing is put up with structuring that it be affordable at a certain number, and that number, once an owner wants to sell it in the future, can only be sold at a set appreciation value, not market, affordability number, to keep it as a true affordable housing development.
now that we're talking about affordable as well, is one of those or things that come to my mind is schools. We've seen our schools explode. They're getting kind of like so many extra students with people moving here. Do you think that our schools are meeting the demand, or they need, maybe to be expanded, or do you think everything's good with the schools, in your opinion, or is that something you're looking at?
My understanding is that our school count has been level for nearly 8 years, I believe, around 13,000 students. So a lot of money was put into the renovation and expansion of schools when Bill Del Brugge was here. So the Buddy Taylor School was totally reformatted, refaced, new roof, etc. The Wadsworth School was redone. The Indian Trails, the Belterre Elementary, these are newer structures that were updated maybe 10 years ago. I don't see a need for more schools right now, but that's not something the city council's involved in. That's the Board of Education. But I don't see there's a reason to be adding any more new schools because we just have not had an increase in the student population.
Okay.
Well, I was just going to mention also that in the beginning of the year, the University of Florida came out with a study that said that the Flagler County Sheriff's Department is in a deficit of, let's say, about 35 officers. And they had a plan to pick up 12 this year, next year, and next. Do we have that in the budget to pick up another 35? And do you agree that we are short by that many?
I don't believe it's 35. I think we're adding 6 or 8 new deputies. I think we're balanced right now with our law enforcement numbers, and I think the city is served well enough by the sheriff's department. So, the money's already been budgeted.
Okay.
There's an amendment on the current ballot that we're going to see on the 5th, dealing with what the city council put forth to go ahead and do what some people are saying are bonds by the current mayor, or I don't think that's fair, but they're talking about doing bonds that are unlimited, no time to pay back, and basically don't need the approval of the residents who have to pay for them. Do you agree with this amendment, or what is your opinion? Let me ask you, what is your opinion of this amendment, and do you think it should be on the ballot?
I do not agree with the amendment. I think the wording was very misleading, and it is changing what the charter was when we were established. The charter now calls for borrowing of $15 million to be repaid in a 3 to 5 year term. That is a bit tough. I do agree that I think we could increase that number to maybe 30 or 50 million because of inflation, and we're 25 years old, and that number, okay, but that's a different verbiage. What was put together by the council is just it's taking out any limits whatsoever. And if our intention was to be pay-as-you-go type of city, which is what the charter provides for, then I don't think it's my right to totally cast that away and give the council a carte blanche use of the people's money. So I do think that we could put on the next ballot in 2 years the request to be able to raise that number, and we'll work on what that number could be. But to do away with it, I don't know where that idea came from. And the way it was worded, I thought was terribly misleading.
Some of the rumors are that this was based on the fact that they wanted a $93 million stadium, or the developer wasn't going to develop what they wanted in the West Palm Coast. I think that with all the infrastructure issues we have, well, it doesn't matter what I think, but what is your opinion? Do you think that money would be better served taking loans to fix our infrastructure as opposed to any more growth? Or what's your opinion on that?
I'm sorry, I'm not quite understanding the question.
Do you think that we should be funding a new stadium for kids and so forth, or whatever it is?
Okay.
Or should we be funding infrastructure projects that we absolutely need right now?
Okay, so I'm a contract person, and I go by what a contract says. Black and white, and I look at every paragraph. I've read thousands of documents. Show it to me in black and white. I'm hearing two different stories. I'm hearing that the city was being asked to spend the money to build a stadium. And then I've also been told that a developer that runs stadiums was willing to spend that money, put the stadium up, and we would lease it from them. Two different stories. So I don't have a comment.
Okay.
I also heard that money was already worked into the original plan 15, 20 years ago of the development of that big westward expansion. That should have been already picked. That's in that grand plan, if it were. Do you agree with that? Did you hear that as well, I should say?
Yes, westward expansion has been there for many decades, okay? The Rayonier Timber Company had, it was either 2 or 3 different DRIs out there, and I don't know exactly the names of them. The monies that were just allocated for the road, the loop road, is different from any planned development. That's separate, okay? The road has been planned for a long time through the state, working with the state Department of Transportation. They were looking to be able to give some relief from I-95. And so up in Jacksonville, they've been working on the First Coast Parkway. It's a beautiful construction, and it is needed for the amount of expansion that's occurring in Jacksonville. But their goal was to be able to have another north-south artery to relieve some of the pressure on 95, which, as you know, when there's an accident on 95, you're going to sit there for two hours easily when they shut it down. So I do think that we need other roadways that will give relief to that major interstate. So that road has been planned for a long time, and so that money set aside for it is now been funded. It's being funded. So that's a separate conversation from the westward expansion about getting subdivisions approved. That's
and
separate.
when you say the roadway, you talk about the loop. Okay.
Correct.
Okay. I also heard in the westward expansion there's a lot of commercial zoning happening. Have you seen any of that, just being you work in that field?
I've heard of it. I have not seen any
Plans?
I haven't seen any plans at all.
Okay. All right. Well, we've talked with Cornelia Downing Brown, Manfrey for a while now, and we know that she's busy, and we hope that you get to see a little bit more about her and so forth. But first, before I close anything up and so forth, I want to turn it back over to her and have her go ahead and let her tell you more about herself and how to reach her if you're interested in talking with her more and getting to know more about her platform and what she'll do as the mayor of Palm Coast. Ms. Manfrey.
Thank you. Thank you. This is a very unique area. In my corporate days, I did a great deal of traveling. At one point, I was responsible for half of the country with the United Artists Theaters. I've been in and out of a lot of places. This is a very unique, very green, very nature-oriented, pathways, byways, bikeways. It's a lovely community. I think ITT did an amazing job planning it out. But the mantle of our opportunity time is now to make sure that we have the right infrastructure for our future growth. We have a good city manager. We have a happy, collaborative city council. I also talk about Palm Coast being the heart of Flagler County. And when I talk to companies looking at Northeast Florida, I talk to them about the beauty of Palm Coast and also our surrounding towns, especially Flagler Beach, with the access to the beach. This is a very special area, and I'm running for mayor because I want to protect it and I want to serve the people and make sure that we have the customer service that one would expect when you call City Hall. Thank you.
How would someone reach you if they want to talk to you more or have any questions for you?
My website is www.cornelia, the number 4, palmcoast.com. So you can send me a message through there or my email, which is cmanfre, MANFRE, at corneliamanfrey.com.
All right.
Thank
you so much, Cornelia.
Thank you
for
very
coming on.
much. It's been
Thank you.
made me really think.
All right. Thank you for joining us. We hope that you liked this episode. I hope that you were able to get a little bit more information on Cornelia, and that if you like her and so forth, please follow up with her. And please be involved in the elections. It's very important that we have everyone involved in the elections this year, that we find the right people to manage our city so that we can fix some of the problems that we are seeing are very relevant to us all. Mm-hmm. Now, please like and subscribe, and please join us for future content. Thank you so much.